The following program, Live and Learn, is made possible by Aging Partners. Find out more on their website.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Live and Learn. My name's Kim Hachia. Stay with us today as my guest is Scott Young, who's the director of the Food Bank of Lincoln. I think you'll find the interview interesting.
After a struggle spanning about 70 years, women in the U.S. gained the right to vote in 1920. Actually, women in Nebraska gained the right to vote in municipal elections a little earlier than this. Stay tuned for an informative discussion on how women's suffrage was involved in our history.
I'm Bill Ainsley. With the election coming up, you need to be registered and know where to vote. Election Commissioner Dave Shively has more information.
Read any good books lately? Oh, we've got some wonderful books to suggest for you. Pat Leach, the director of the Lincoln City Libraries, is with us today, and she'll give you some good advice about what to read. Stay tuned.
This and more on today's Live and Learn.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Live and Learn. My guest today is Scott Young, who's the director of the Food Bank of Lincoln, and we're going to be talking a little bit about what's going on with the food bank in light of the pandemic, maybe the future of the food bank, and a lot of interesting things about that organization, which is a really important service agency here in Lincoln. So hi, Scott. Welcome to the show.
Kim, thanks for having us today.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. So why don't you give us just sort of your elevator speech about what the food bank is, who you serve, and then maybe we'll quickly segue into kind of how you guys have had to pivot in light of the current pandemic issues.
Yeah, Kim, the Food Bank of Lincoln was established in 1982. Our mission here in 2020 is to alleviate hunger in southeast Nebraska. We do that in a number of ways that have all been turned upside down by the pandemic. But we are 33 people that work out here on 48th and Doris Bear Circle. If you get to the old city dump in Lincoln, you've gone a little too far. And we distribute food. We help people with their food stamp applications. We have programs that help people get out of poverty. And we do a lot of child hunger programs. All of this stuff turned upside down now by the pandemic. In our last fiscal year, which ended June 30th, we connected people to 11.5 million meals. Going into the fiscal year, we set 2.2 million as a goal and thought that would be a stretch. The pandemic set in and everything changed. More food became available, more need was evident. And so we had a record-setting year that none of us would have thought possible. So we did 11.5 million meals in fiscal year 20. Now in fiscal year 21, we're on pace to do 15.5 million meals. So we have gone through a boom period here, and our capacity is really stretched. We continue to adapt to the pandemic, and we continue to plan and think differently about our work. When the pandemic started to boil, and I was slow to pick it up, and I have a couple of young colleagues here at the Food Bank who said, you know what, we better pay attention to this, and we need to do some planning around it. And Lynn Sampson, who is our community impact director, said to the leadership group of the Food Bank, we have to think about our work differently. And I have repeated that so often. Originally we said, what are we going to do next week? And then it became, what are we going to do over the next couple of weeks? And then we started to plan by the month. And I would say right now that we're in a conversation about planning for the last quarter of the calendar year here. But it has changed from month to month, and every plan we've put in place has changed a little bit or dramatically, depending on what the circumstances were. But it's moving food through a system in 16 counties in southeast Nebraska. Our work is a lot and it's hard. And I think, Kim, that the scale of the food bank is larger than what most people understand.
So 11.5 million meals is astonishing to me. Do you have a number? I mean, like how many people that serves? I know that's a guesstimate. You can't really tell.
Well, I mean, what we have in Southeast Nebraska, we're part of the Feeding America Network, and they do annual research about how many people are food insecure in our service area. We serve 16 counties in Southeast Nebraska. And the last map, the meal gap number was 55,570 people in our service area who are considered to be food insecure. They do it on a county by county basis.
How do they define food insecure? What does that mean?
It has to do with poverty numbers, income numbers. There are a number of complex formulas that go into determining who a food insecure person is, Kim. It's a lot of research and data. So they come up with that number of around 55,000 people. And I'd like to tell you that we're serving all 55,000, but it's just not that clean.
Right.
But that's how many people need meals. Our map the meal gap missing meals number is around 10 million meals. So we're doing that 11.5 million, which means we're getting the right number of meals into our service area, but we're not reaching all the people that are in the group of 55,000. So it's messy, it's wild, and it's fun. Feeding America anticipates a 16 to 17% increase in food insecurity due to the pandemic. So there's a lot more need on the way and here.
And when you speak about meals, a lot of people might think that's like a plate of food, but that's not how you distribute, right?
No, it isn't. The meals that we talk about are defined by the United States Department of Agriculture. They say that a meal is 1.2 pounds of food, which is a lot. I mean, that'd be 8 ounces of meat, 4 ounces of vegetables, 4 ounces of fruit, so that's a lot, but that's the measure we use to calculate our meals based on pounds of food distributed and then food stamp outreach meals.
So I think there's some images that of people like at the distributions you have 33 people. How do you cover 55 counties?
16 counties.
Or 16 counties with 33 people. I know that originally maybe your volunteer base went poof, and then you had people come in, the National Guard maybe. How is that? And I know that some of your distribution sites have changed too. Like you can't maybe go into schools now, and schools were a big site. So how did you guys figure that out?
What happened was we fundamentally went to the no contact, low contact drive-through mobile pantry operation. We can operate one of those with 6 to 8 people pretty easily. We had the National Guard with us in April, May, and June. Right now we have 7 young AmeriCorps members who are between the ages of 18 and 26 who are helping at our distributions. They've come from all over America to be with us for a couple of months. We are recruiting some volunteers, but we have to ask volunteers, some health screening questions, and they have to be under 59 or younger, I should say, and 18 or over. So, and we depend on a lot of senior citizen volunteers that we had to send home, which was very painful for us and for them.
Right.
But we felt that was a safety issue. So we'll go like yesterday afternoon, yesterday, I should say on Tuesday, the 22nd of September, we served over 500 people at 3 different sites, including 292 people at Roper Elementary School. So we aren't able to go into schools right now in Lincoln, but we do have our backpack programs operating in 27 rural schools where volunteers can go into the schools. Those will start. We had to delay the start of that because of the delay of food getting to the food bank. Those will start in early October. So we've adapted everything. We set out priorities that really helped our hard decision making, Kim, getting food to people, staff safety, volunteer safety, and an eye on the future of the food bank. And those things have been our guiding lights for the pandemic, and we're sticking to those. And that's made for some hard conversations and difficult choices, but it's an emergency situation for nonprofits in our community.
Yeah. So if I, as just a person who lives in Lincoln, wants to help my idea of my neighbors, which is everybody, how help the food bank? I mean, what are some of your goals or top needs that I could be useful with right now?
Yeah. We are looking for volunteers who are being plugged into volunteer groups, civic groups, or churches that can offer up some volunteers that can help based on their age and health indicators. We're always looking for dollars. Time, talent, and treasure is the thing, Kim. We hope that people in this community and in Southeast Nebraska will support the charitable system. Nonprofits are really under a lot of pressure. There is more need than ever before, regardless, whether it's addiction or homelessness or, eviction issues or mental health issues. There's more problems now than there has been, at least in my lifetime. And so we are looking for support, not only for the food bank, but for all of our 55 agency partners and our school partners to get all this stuff that needs to be done during the pandemic. We all need to lend a hand here. Otherwise, more and more people are going to fall through the cracks. This is a difficult situation, and everybody's wondering how long is this going to go on, and when we started planning, we were thinking 60, 90 days, then we'll get back to what we were doing. That's not what this is. So
right.
We hope people will support their favorite charities and their local businesses and their churches. A lot of entities need a lot of support right now, including the food bank.
Is Lincoln, is it unusual, or is it more common for social services agencies to be such a tight network like we appear to have in Lincoln? Are we just lucky?
No, I think it's common. I think it's more common than we believe, that we like to think we're the most whatever it is. And we have a network of 200 food banks, and there's a lot of supportive communities across America that support their food banks.
Right.
So Nebraska and Lincoln, we have great reputations for caring for each other, taking care of each other's needs and everything, but that's more common than we like to think. But I would say that our community is extremely giving and interested in making people thrive and have good lives. So, but it's a challenge, and it never goes away. It was hard before the pandemic, and it's harder still now.
So what are you projecting out for the future? I know it's hard to project because the future seems so kind of like stepping into some sort of a bog.
Yeah. We know that people are going to be hungry. There's going to be an increasing number of people that are going to be hungry. We know that at the Food Bank of Lincoln, we need to seek some new solutions and some different solutions because we're never going to food bank our way out of this food insecurity issue. This requires advocacy. It requires education. It requires a lot of work on our part to shorten the lines. The best work I think we can do is to help someone not need us. The idea would be to put ourselves out of business, but that's not in sight. So what we need to do is work hard to lower the need in our communities that we serve and continue to keep our eye on alleviating hunger in Southeast Nebraska.
Yeah, I've heard that before, that idea of working to put yourselves out of work. I think most social service agencies kind of wish they could do that. So, well, Scott,
yeah.
we are out of time, and this just flew by. And thank you for being my guest, but more importantly, thank you for heading up one of Lincoln's just best agencies. It's just Lincoln and the Southeast Nebraska area is really, really lucky to have you and have the food bank be part of our community. So I thank you very much.
Kim, thank you. I've got the best job in town.
You do. And I'd like to thank our audience for sticking with us and remind everybody that it's never too late to live and learn.
Hi, I'm Randy Jones with Aging Partners. Did you know that Lincoln expects a 75% increase in the number of seniors living in our community over the next 15 years? Aging Partners is a community service that provides fitness programs to help keep older adults strong and healthy. This year, Lincoln Cares donations are providing funds for new fitness equipment. You can help make this happen. Sign up to support Lincoln Cares and add $1 to your LES bill each month.
Welcome to Live and Learn. One of the basic tenets of democracy is that everybody who is eligible has a vote. It was just 100 years ago that the women in the U.S. got the right to vote. My guest today is Lynn Roper. Lynn, welcome to the program, and this is an interesting discussion right now during this celebration.
Thank you.
Lynn, you have become an authority on the 19th Amendment. Tell us how you got involved in that and developed that interest.
Well, about 2.5 years ago, I read a review of a book and I went and bought it called The Woman's Hour, which I think you have a copy, by Elaine Weiss, The Great Fight to Win the Vote. And I read the book, and it's a fabulous, stunning book. And it is the story of the 36th state to ratify the amendment. That created a huge amount of curiosity in me. First of all, I wanted to know when Nebraska ratified, but then I just became I'm a sort of a self-taught person on this topic. I just began reading, probably read 20, 25 books, and researching. The stories were so incredible. They just led me to want to know more.
The movement really began back in the 1840s, and how did that get started in terms of people mobilizing?
Well, this is before the Civil War, so you have to think of the context, but actually the women's suffragists were part of and began working for abolition. And these were women who were attending abolition meetings and not being allowed to speak, because at that time women could not speak in public meetings. That got them a little agitated, and so it was really the abolitionist movement that spawned the women's rights movement. So Seneca Falls, 1848, Elizabeth Cady Stanton called a few of her friends together to talk really about women's rights as a whole, property rights, ability to speak in public. And the right to vote wasn't the high priority as some of these other things were. Frederick Douglass also attended this Seneca Falls meeting, and he said, you really ought to be asking for the right to vote as well. And that's where it started, before the Civil War, out of the abolitionist movement.
So then the act was not passed until 1920. Give us a little thumbnail sketch then of that time period there.
Well, we think we know how women won the vote. You know, a bunch of women met at Seneca Falls in hoop skirts and bonnets, the pictures show. Then you sort of flash forward to some marches and a few picturesque picket signs at the White House, and poof, men decided to give their mothers, wives, and daughters the gift of the vote. That's not how it happened at all. Really, winning the vote required 72 years of ceaseless agitation by 3 generations of women, dedicated, fearless suffragists who sought really to overturn centuries of law and traditional gender roles. The women who launched the movement were dead by the time it was completed. And the women who secured its final success weren't even born when it began. It took more than 900 local, state, and national campaigns involving tens of thousands of grassroots volunteers, financed by millions of dollars of mostly small, but a few large donations by women across the country. And it enfranchised 1/2 of the nation's citizens, 27 million American women, who would then be able to vote for the first time in the 1920 presidential election.
So the Congress passed this act, but then it had to be ratified by, at that time, 3/4 of the states, which was 36. And then there were 35 that actually did ratify it. 8 did not. They rejected it. So Tennessee became the focal point for that 36. Tell us a little bit about that.
This is an absolutely unbelievable, fascinating story. And that is the subject of the book, The Woman's Hour. The suffragists did not want to have a southern state be their last stand. And it was the last stand for both the suffragists who'd been working for 70 years and by then a very organized anti-suffrage group. So they all gathered in Tennessee in August, Nashville, Tennessee in August of 1920. And the Hermitage Hotel was the focus where both the pro-suffragists and the antis were. And they lobbied and lobbied and lobbied their legislature that was called into special session August 9th. The House the Senate passed it 25-4. But then the House postponed the vote. The speaker changed his mind, and it was a real tough battle. The suffragists thought they would lose by 2 votes as they counted the votes. And interestingly, yellow roses and red roses, I learned about. Yellow rose, you wore a yellow rose if you were pro-suffrage, and a red rose if you were anti. But since it was the last stand, the anti group, the liquor interests, business interests, the Confederate states' rights interests, the racial interests, not wanting Black women, everybody gathered there and lobbied hard. And truly, until the very last page of that book, I thought they were going to lose. However, a young man, the youngest man in the whole legislature, 24-year-old Harry Byrne, had been counted as an anti, but that morning he received a letter from his mother. Now, his district was very anti-suffrage, but his mother admonished him to help Mrs. Catt. Harry Chapman Catt was running it at that time, the pro-suffrage group, and vote for it. And he changed his vote. And it was astounding. And it was an amazing, amazing victory, even though they tried afterwards some procedural things to have another vote. But the Tennessee vote is amazing.
Let's move on to Nebraska a little bit. There was a lot of activity here.
Yes.
Culmination of some of the work occurred in the 1880s. What happened there?
Interestingly, before we were a state, the territorial legislature listened to a woman named Amelia Bloomer, who said that women ought to have the right to vote. And they said, good idea, and voted yes. However, the other half didn't of the council. This is when we were a territory. However, when we became a state, March 1, 1867, just 7 months later, Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton showed up in Omaha to begin the Nebraska suffrage movement. Now, we had 3 statewide votes by men, 1871, 1882, and 1914, all of which failed, obviously.
Lynn, our time is getting a little short here. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions about, first of all, you're wearing a sash, and which was emblematic of it. Tell us a little bit about that.
This sash of purple standing for loyalty, white standing for purity, and gold standing for hope was an idea of Alice Paul, who had been involved overseas in London and England in their suffrage movement. And so she brought this sash back. They had green in the place of gold in the English suffragette movement. But for the US, this sash then became their symbol, and they wore it at every parade, at every picketing, and every time they appeared on behalf of suffrage.
The Nebraska History Museum has a special display about this. Give us a little brief sketch of that.
Oh, it's fabulous. It's about the Nebraska suffrage movement, which is a fascinating story and filled with a lot of people who work very hard. This exhibit is on the 3rd floor. It's the entire 3rd floor. And wonderfully, the Nebraska suffragists kept great notes and diaries and artifacts, and they're all on display there. I encourage everyone to go see it. It opened last August. It'll be open through January of next year. And the museum is open.
So that's one of the things. There's something else that has happened. The U.S. Postal Service has actually issued a commemorative stamp for the women's suffrage. So that's another recognition of what has gone on. Lynn, one of the peculiarities about this whole thing is that in Nebraska, women did have the right to vote for municipal elections before the national suffrage. Tell us about that.
Municipal suffrage allowed you to vote in local elections, school board, city council, but you couldn't vote for president or governor or any state. Municipal suffrage could be passed through the state legislature, didn't require a constitutional amendment, which full suffrage would. And so they were able to get municipal suffrage passed in 1917. However, a long lawsuit by the anti-suffragists took 2 years, and the national amendment passed, fortunately, so they got full suffrage.
In closing, Lynn, I'd like to also mention that the U.S. Postal Service has come out with a commemorative stamp for women's suffrage. So another recognition of this historical event. Mm-hmm. Lynn, thanks a lot for bringing us this insight into a part of our history, particularly as it relates to Nebraska. Remember, it's never too late to live and learn about women's suffrage and how it affects our democracy.
Hi, I'm Randy Jones with Aging Partners. Did you know that Lincoln expects a 75% increase in the number of seniors living in our community over the next 15 years? Aging Partners is a community service that provides fitness programs to help keep older adults strong and healthy. This year, Lincoln Cares donations are providing funds for new fitness equipment. You can help make this happen. Sign up to support Lincoln Cares and add $1 to your LES bill each month.
Hello, I'm Bill Ainsley, your host for this segment of Live and Learn. This is an important year for Americans as we vote on the presidency as well as many important local and state issues. But before we can vote, we have to be properly registered. With me today is David Shively, Lancaster County Election Commissioner, who can tell us exactly how to do that. Dave, thank you very much for being on the program today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Bill. I always enjoy doing these types of programs.
Dave, why is it important to register and vote?
Well, first of all, you need to be registered if you want to vote. So you need to get registered if you want to vote. But it gives you a process in our democracy. It allows you to help make the decisions on who's going to represent us in the future.
Dave, what are the qualifications someone must meet before they can register to vote?
Well, first of all, you have to be at least 18 years of age or be 18 on or before the presidential election date, which this year is November 3rd. Be a U.S. citizen, a resident of Nebraska, have not had any felony convictions, or it's been at least 2 years since the completion of that sentence, and also not to have been found mentally incompetent.
There are many places to register to vote, far too many for us to list here. Dave, please explain some of the locations.
Well, certainly it's become an easy process to register to vote over the years. Of course, you can come to our election office and register to vote in person, but there's simpler ways to do it. You don't have to drive to our office to do that any longer. Several years ago, probably over 20 years ago, we started allowing people to register to vote by mail. So we have those forms available on our website, as well as many libraries, post offices, and banks. Those can be picked up and mailed in. That form is also available on our website. But one of the newest things that we have, and we've had since now about 2016, is the ability for people to register to vote online. And they can do that as long as they have a Nebraska driver's license or state identification card. And it's a very simple process. You just make sure you have that card available to you when you do that. If you need to make a change or update, you can register to vote online as well. And also you can register to vote in conjunction of getting your driver's license. When you update your driver's license or get your driver's license or obtain a state identification card, or applying for any other type of federal or state government services.
Sometimes a person needs to update their registration. Dave, when does someone need to re-register?
Well, you need to re-register if you've moved to a different street address, different residential address. That's the most important thing. The other thing is that maybe you've gotten married or changed your name. That would be a sign to also re-register to vote. And also, if you want to change your political party affiliation from one party to another, or from a party to being unaffiliated, nonpartisan, you could do that too. That would be a reason to re-register to vote.
What does partisan and nonpartisan mean, and when does someone have to choose a party?
Well, you choose a party to represent, I guess, your belief system or the party that you want to belong to. But partisan races in Nebraska, we don't have a lot of partisan races in Nebraska. We're a very nonpartisan state, but partisan races are such as president, Senate, United States Senate, Congress, governor, all the statewide constitutional offices are all considered partisan offices, as well as all the countywide offices such as county clerk, county commissioner, county treasurer, and so forth. Almost all the other races on our ballot are nonpartisan. It means that everyone votes on those races. So if you want to be involved in the partisan part of electing people in a partisan primary, such as we had back in May, you need to be registered as one of the parties in order to help nominate those candidates to the general election. But every other election, your party affiliation really doesn't affect your ballot that you'll be given, because everyone gets the same ballot.
What are the residence requirements?
Well, a person can register to vote the day that they move into Lancaster County. We don't have any number of days that you have to be a resident here before you can register to vote. You can register to vote the very first day you move to the county.
Some folks are concerned about jury duty. How is that affected by registering to vote?
Well, certainly jury duty includes a list of registered voters, but it also includes voters that have driver's licenses as well. So those two lists are combined, duplicates are removed, and we can, the jury commissioner, which is down in the clerk of the district court's office, removes all duplicates. So your name would be on the list, but it would also be on the list if you have a driver's license or state identification card as well.
When we started preparing for this interview, we had the voter registration breakdown for Lancaster County as of the end of 2019. That is, Republicans, 76,464, Democrat, 68,373, Libertarian, 2,975, Nonpartisan, 43,769, totals to 191,581. So Dave, in general, how have the percentages changed?
Well, we've gone up totally of about 4,000 registered voters since the end of 2019, which is pretty typical. That seems like a pretty big growth, but that's pretty typical in a presidential election year. The percentage between the parties has pretty much stayed the same. They may vary slightly since then, but the percentages between the two have changed moderately. Probably the biggest area that we see continual growth is those people that are choosing to register as not nonpartisan and not being affiliated with any political party.
There are important dates to remember leading up to the election. So Dave, do you want to go through those dates and explain the significance, please?
Certainly. Let's talk a little bit about early voting. Early voting, some people refer to as absentee voting. You might hear it also referred to as mail-in voting. We kind of lump it all into the same category here in Nebraska. Several years ago, Nebraska went from absentee voting with excuses. You had to provide an excuse to be an early voter or an absentee voter to we are a no excuse early voting state now. So we have been for now over 20 years. So there's whether you're going to do it by mail or in person here at our office, you don't need to provide us with an excuse to be an early voter. But the first big date that's coming up that we have will be the first date that we actually mail out early voting ballots by mail. That is September 28th. Then on October 5th, we will start allowing in-person early voting here in our office. People can actually come to the election office and vote here in person. Those are kind of the big deadlines on early voting that is starting. Some voter registration deadlines are also coming up. By October 16th, if you want to register to vote and you're going to mail that voter registration in, you have to have that postmarked by October 16th. It's also the last day you can complete a voter registration at the Department of Motor Vehicles or with the county treasurers. And that's also the same deadline if people are going to register to vote using our online portal to register to vote. Then the next deadline for registration is October 23rd. We will be open until 6 p.m. that day, but people need to register to vote by 6 p.m. on that date. On October 23rd is also the last date that we can receive an application for early ballots to be mailed. November 2nd, we'll allow people to vote early in our office. But November 2nd, the day before the election, is the last day that people can vote in person here early in our office. And then the polls will be open on November 3rd from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And by 8 p.m. that night is the deadline for all voters to return their early voting ballots.
You might want to talk about the difference between absentee and mail-in voting, just so people are straight on what the differences are.
Right. Well, really, we don't. They're basically the same thing here in Nebraska. If people are going to be absent or going to be out of the country, or out of the state, or out of the area, they can vote early. Absentee and early voting is basically the same thing. It's early voting or early voting by mail. We kind of lump it all into the same thing in Nebraska. I know other states are a little bit different, that they have different words for those things, but we call it all early voting by mail, early voting in person. It's all basically the same thing here in Nebraska.
We really want to encourage all adults to vote, including people with disabilities. Dave, how can voters receive help in voting?
Well, first of all, one of the big ways is that certainly if they are unable to mark their ballot themselves, for whatever reason, a family member or friend can assist them in marking their ballot. The voter still needs to sign the envelope, but maybe they can't hold a pencil, or they're visually impaired. Someone could assist them either at the polling place or at home. So that's one of the big ways that people can assist them. If on election day they go to the polling site, board members of two different political parties could also assist people in marking their ballots.
Or even accessible voting devices. Dave, so please give us some more information.
Yeah, as part of the Help America Vote Act, which was passed in October 2002, all polling locations and the election office has to have a machine that's available for anyone with disabilities to be able to vote in private and unassisted. And our newest machine, which we introduced in May, is an express vote machine, which people can cast their ballots using that machine as well, with a variety of different disabilities. It works with a variety of different types of disabilities.
Considering that people might use this assistive device or vote early by turning ballots in at the Election Commission office, how do you ensure the secrecy of the voting?
Well, the ballots are all secured and sealed up, both at the polling location as well as here at the office. When early ballots by mail come in, we have a counting board that opens them up, and we have very strict protocols on how they do that. They flip the ballot over, the envelope over where the signature and the name are, so they can't see that. And then they remove the ballots from the envelopes. They're never looking at the name of who voted it. It's always separated from the voters, or from the envelopes are separated from the ballots after they're out, and they don't look at those.
So now that the election is finally over, people have voted and the ballots are in the box. How are the results tabulated?
Well, we have 6 digital scan counting machines. They're called a DS850 that's manufactured by Election Systems and Software out of Omaha. We've used the similar system for a number of years. Just as things get newer here and technology is bigger, we have gotten new machines that actually tabulate a little bit easier and better for us, and we're really happy to have those new machines.
So Dave, how many people do we need working at the polls on election day, and how do people become poll workers?
Well, we need a little over 1,000 people to be election workers on a big election like this. We have 5 people at each polling site. And so if people are interested in being an election board worker, they can contact our office at 402-441-7311 and talk with our election board coordinator, and we'd be happy to get an application out to them. We're always looking for new people and would welcome anyone that might be interested.
So we hope all adults be registered or re-registered so that they can get out and vote and make their voices heard in the election. There is much that we just haven't had time to discuss in this program. For more information, folks can contact Dave at David J. Shively, Election Commissioner, Lancaster County Election Office, 601 North 46th Street, Lincoln, Nebraska, 68503, 402-441-7311. lancaster.ne.gov/election. Lancaster County Election Commissioner Dave Shively, I want to thank you very much for being on the program today.
Thank you. I've enjoyed being a part of the program.
How we vote this year might help to decide the future of the country. When we are considering our decisions, remember, it is never too late to live and learn.
Hi, I'm Randy Jones with Aging Partners. Did you know that Lincoln expects a 75% increase in the number of seniors living in our community over the next 15 years? Aging Partners is a community service that provides fitness programs to help keep older adults strong and healthy. This year, Lincoln Cares donations are providing funds for new fitness equipment. You can help make this happen. Sign up to support Lincoln Cares and add $1 to your LES bill each month.
Hi, I'm Lita Powell Drake, and today we're going to talk about the Lincoln City Libraries. They've been around for a long time, much longer than I remembered. And with us today is Pat Leach. She's Executive Director, and she's going to give us some really wonderful ideas about books to read. Welcome to Live and Learn, Pat. How nice. Now, when did the first library start here in Lincoln?
Well, it's interesting. In our overall history, the first libraries in Lincoln were in the 1870s or so, and it was private associations, groups of community members who got together to start libraries. There was one for men and one for women. Soon after, the state legislature set up the ability for cities to have a city library. And so Lincoln did that very quickly in the 1870s. The library used rented spaces within Lincoln. And in about 1900 or so, Andrew Carnegie, the wealthy philanthropist, was creating libraries throughout the country. And in Lincoln, actually, it was the wife of William Jennings Bryan who spearheaded the Lincoln campaign to get Carnegie to sponsor the construction of a building here in Lincoln. And that became the Old Main Library that many people may remember was on the site of where Bennett Martin Library is now at the corner of 14th and N Streets. That Old Main Library opened its doors in 1902 to great acclaim and served the library system through the early 1960s.
So then it was rebuilt?
At that time, the Old Main Library was demolished and the Bennett Martin Library was built on the same site.
Okay, how many branches of the libraries do we have here in Lincoln?
Well, in addition to the central library, we have 7 branch libraries, and then actually we also have a bookmobile that provides some additional service.
Can you name those libraries?
Well, sure.
Okay.
We have three libraries that are considered neighborhood libraries. The Dan A. Williams Library is in the Arnold Heights neighborhood, connected to Arnold Elementary School. The Bethany Library is on North Cotner Boulevard, the South Branch Library then at 27th and South Streets. Then we have what we call our quadrant libraries, larger libraries, the Anderson Library in Northeast Lincoln, the Isley Branch Library in Northwest Lincoln, Walt Branch Library in Southwest Lincoln, and then Gear Branch Library, which happens to be our busiest library, is at the corner of 56th and Normal Boulevard. So 7 branches.
Oh, well now I would like you to recommend 5 books that would be wonderful reads for seniors.
Well, I have to say that one of the hardest things for any librarian is to choose just a certain number of books to recommend. So I did choose 5 to talk about today that I certainly recommend to readers. And if you ask me another day, I'll probably have 5 more. The first book that I want to talk about is a classic, To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. I mentioned this one because I think somehow people think everybody's already read it. And I often encourage people to think about books that maybe they missed and books that have a lasting impact. So a lot of people have seen the movie and so are familiar with the story of the Girl Scout who observes her father, Atticus Finch, energetically defend a wrongly accused Black man in their small southern town. Frankly, I myself read this book for the first time just a year or 2 ago.
Oh, I'm embarrassed.
I know, I was embarrassed too. But the truth is, some of these books we have to go back and fill in gaps. I'd already seen the movie, so I sort of knew the story. I could only think of Gregory Peck in that role. I really prefer to read a book before I see the movie, typically.
Okay, and then our next one, Being Mortal.
Yes, Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. This book was a One Book, One Lincoln selection a few years ago. And this is a book that is about a topic that some people would consider pretty serious. It's about end of life issues. So whether somebody is advancing in age or maybe has some kind of terminal condition or disease, Atul Gawande is a physician whose book is about how do we ask the right questions of ourselves and our family as these issues approach. And the book is remarkably readable. People of all ages enjoyed it when it was our One Book, One Lincoln title. And what he does is, A, he's an excellent writer, and B, he weaves in his own story of his relationship with his own father. And I think a lot of people found themselves both learning and thinking about their own situations, but also feeling like they'd read an excellent book.
I've read that book, and it is excellent, and it's an easy read. It has a difficult title, I would say. You know, Being Mortal, a lot of things, oh, wow, I'm mortal.
That's right.
But anyway, it's a really great read. Okay, what else?
Well, another book that I'm suggesting is called Cold Sassy Tree.
I've never heard of that one.
Well, it's by a woman named Olive Ann Burns, and I bring this one forward in that some time ago, I had a job at the library in what we call the home service. So it's a service that people sign up for where we mail books out to people who are either ill or not able to get to a library anymore. Cold Sassy Tree was a book that a lot of different people enjoyed. And so I mention it now as sort of a maybe now unknown title. It was published in the 1980s. It's set, though, around the 1920s in the South, about a boy whose grandfather elopes with a younger woman. And the boy's point of view is fascinating on its own. Olive Ann Burns writes an excellent story that is pretty funny, actually, but it also addresses issues of love and belonging and who should be doing what in a small town. So it was a real go-to title for me that I have found that a lot of people enjoy this novel called Cold Sassy Tree.
All right, and how about Frederick Douglass?
Well, you know, some people absolutely love this kind of biography, which is in some ways kind of a doorstep. It's a huge book. It's very well researched. It's very detailed, and it's about a remarkable person in American history. Of course, you know, Frederick Douglass. I'd say this book is perfect for winter reading. It won a Pulitzer Prize, very well researched, and yet Blight just tells the story so well. I so enjoyed reading this book. You know, it illuminates a lot about American history of the mid-1800s through the life of just this one man. And I really found a new sense of his accomplishments, as well as the context within American history. So I firmly recommend Frederick Douglass for people who love that kind of deep dive into someone's life and history.
And now, Dear Edward, and this is the One Book, One Lincoln selection.
That's right, Dear Edward by Ann Napolitano. So it's our featured selection this year. And it's a contemporary novel. It's about a boy who is the sole survivor of an airline accident. So his family, his mother, his father, his beloved older brother are all killed. And the boy, named Edward, needs to pick up the pieces of his life and figure out what will his life be like? Who will he be? He's taken on by an aunt and uncle who love him and want to take care of him. He has great friends. The story is told sort of as flashbacks to that airplane before the crash, and then also Edward's life afterwards. And the title refers to letters written to Edward. That's one meaning of the title, by people who found his situation so poignant and fascinating and who wanted to reach out to Edward. I really hope that people will read this and be part of our community conversation about it.
I want to tell you about one of the best books I have ever read, which is not on your list. It's the library book.
By Susan Orlean.
Yeah, 1986 in Los Angeles, I think, where the books caught fire. And the firemen, of course, the firemen came in, and spread water all over the books. How are you going to save the books?
And it's a fascinating story of the Los Angeles Public Library. Overall, she is such a good storyteller. The library book is certainly one I would recommend too.
Oh, okay. You agree with me. Very good.
I thoroughly agree with you, Lita. Thoroughly.
Okay, what if you're elderly or, ill and you can't get to the library to get books? How can you get them?
We do have some special services. So earlier I mentioned home service, and that's a service that people sign up for, contact the library, and that's a service for people who, through probably medical or other reasons, aren't able to get to a library. What we do through home service is we mail books to and from people so that they're able to continue with their reading through the library. We also have a service that we call book bundles, and that is that you can email the library and you can say, for instance, I need 5 mysteries similar to this other one, or you can say, here's the kind of book I like, choose something for me. And what we will do is we'll put those on hold for you so you can come to the library and you can pick them up. We also offer a service right now during the pandemic where a person can make arrangements for us to meet them at the door of the library with their materials all ready to go so that they don't come inside. We're also finding that right now people are loving that the library offers a lot of downloadable ebooks and audiobooks, and those are through the library's website. I think you're one of our main users of that service through your library card. So downloadable books are very popular as well. And, of course, people can just come to the library and browse for themselves through our collections of materials.
And of course, with this, if you get it online, you can increase the size of the print. 14, 16 point font if you have difficulty seeing.
That's absolutely right. Some people who find books themselves either too heavy or the print not big enough can do a lot of rearranging on their device to make it more readable so they can keep reading.
Oh, Pat Leach. I love the Lincoln City Library. I think that's
the
most important building in the whole city of Lincoln, Nebraska.
Well, through the pandemic, we've been thinking a lot about how do we continue serving people, because we know how important books and reading are to Lincolnites. And so we want to make sure we're serving people in ways that make sense for our current times.
Well, thank you very much, Pat Leach, the director of the Lincoln City Libraries. And remember, it's never too late to live and learn more about the city libraries.
Thank you.